My city's on fire and everyone seems to be arguing over it. The politics, climate change, insurance, the best and worst of humanity. Let's take a critical thinking approach to all of these topics. Hello and welcome to Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, educator in Los Angeles, bringing critical thinking and viewpoint diversity to everything happening in the world. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the LA fires. So, being a heterodox thinker means seeing things from all different angles, not adhering to one side or the other. And I think that there's a lot of areas to pull apart to try and make sense of everything that happened. So if you've been living under a rock or you don't know what's happening, essentially there were a whole bunch of fires that erupted in the Los Angeles area. There was the Altadena fire, the Palisades fire, the Kenneth fire, Hearst fire, Sunset fire, a whole bunch of other ones. And where I live with my family is kind of in the middle of everything. We had fires to not the north, but the south, the east, and the west of us. So we have a view from our home and we could see all these fires going on for the past, week or so. And just kind of, it's been dominating the news. Everyone had the news on, getting updates on their phones, these alerts going off on your phone about new evacuations, friends looking for places to stay because they were getting evacuated. Stories, everyone in the city is like one person removed from someone who lost everything. It's unbelievable how much it's affected people. And if you go closer to those areas, people are walking around like zombies because they've lost so much. And the stories, there's just so many powerful stories to come from here. And I think it's important to try and make sense of this. So what I'm going to do is break down the nuanced complexity of all of this stuff. So essentially what happened was, the Santa Ana winds are very, very strong coming through the LA area. And this is something that's kind of ongoing. There's always really strong winds, especially this time of year. But an increased drought, and it just something happened. For years, I've listened to Joe Rogan podcast. For years, Joe Rogan talked about back when he was on Fear Factor, how he talked to a fireman, and the fireman told him, it's just a matter of time. One day the winds will be just right and the situation will be just right, and a fire is just going to sweep through all of LA and just destroy the whole thing, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I remember hearing that years and years ago. I was like, is that true? Is that true? Is that really going to happen? And now we're in this situation. It seems like that's kind of like what happened. We have something like 30 people known to be dead. Stories of people who were disabled and unable to get out of their homes. $150 billion or more in damages in homes and structures that were just completely decimated. Landmarks. My wife and I would go to a little restaurant in Malibu called Moon Shadows. We would frequent that, fairly often, a couple times a year, and that's gone. The winds were gnarly. I mean, they're like gusts of like 80 miles an hour. I mean, crazy strong winds. My whole house is just shaking with how strong these winds are. And something sparked. Now, what was it? There are fires that erupt because we have an obvious homelessness problem. A lot of homeless people, and a lot of the homeless people, they live in encampments in the woods, in the wild areas of LA. LA is interesting because it's obviously very built up, but there's also a lot of untouched land too in these different canyons and mountains. LA is really mountainous. It's beautiful because it's mountains right into the ocean. But in those areas, homeless people go in there and they have fires and things, and they're not very responsible with how they keep those fires. And sometimes that starts a fire. It also could be arson. A perfect situation, especially once they got started, for people setting these fires. Now, why would someone set these fires? I think it's the same reason why people are school shooters. And here's what I mean by that. Whenever there's a school shooting, a lot of my friends, because I'm an educator, they come to me and they say, "What do you think this is with the school shootings?" I think what it is when you feel like you don't matter in the world, you don't have any purpose in the world. It's just like life is a dark hole. It doesn't matter. If you disappeared, then nothing would change in the world. So you go, well, I'm just going to disappear then. And you become suicidal. You start thinking along those lines. But then you go, well, if I kill myself and I don't matter, then I'm going to kill myself. Make the biggest grand gesture one can possibly make and nothing will be affected. Well, then I'm not going to do that. I want to matter in the world. And it's a lot easier to matter in a negative way than it is in a positive way. If you want to affect thousands of people's lives, dozens of people for generations in a positive way, it's really hard. You have to like dedicate your life to something for a very, and then it'll have some positive ripple effects. But if you want to have a negative impact on thousands of people, you want to be known by millions of people and affect dozens of people for generations, you could do that in 15 minutes. You go out and you do something absolutely horrific. You go out and you like murder babies or something like that, like something really, really terrible. Now that family is going to remember you forever and all of the close relatives of that family. And it'll be on the news all over the place. Nicholas Cruz, who shot up the Parkland School, he was on his phone. He goes, "My name's Nicholas Cruz. You don't know me, but you will." And that was very powerful for me to watch that video, that little video manifesto that he made, because I think it speaks volumes about what's going on. It's like kids that are neglected at home, not kids that are yelled at all the time, but kids that are neglected, like their parents are indifferent to them. They get in trouble at school. They get sent to the principal's office. Their mom or dad has to come in and pick them up. And then the whole ride home, they're yelling at them. And it's better to be yelled at than ignored. Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor and writer, said, "The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference." And if you feel like the world is indifferent to you, if you feel like your place in the world doesn't matter, the idea of making something massive like this and say, "I did that," it means you matter in the world. I know how twisted that sounds, but I do think that's part of what's going on. So why would someone start a fire and cause all this damage? It's like maybe so they can just feel something. It's like teenagers who cut themselves. It's like so you can focus on like pain. Like pain is something very, very real when you don't feel like present in your life. We don't know what started the fires yet. We don't know. It could have been a whole bunch of different things, but it was a perfect storm of a situation with the drought and with these strong winds. It was just a tinderbox waiting to go up. Then fire departments were running out of water. A whole bunch of different reasons. There's funding reasons and things like that. But there's also the fact that a lot of buildings had sprinkler systems. And when a fire rips through and it takes down the whole building, the sprinkler system's still going. It's just kind of like burbling up, from the pipes in the ground. And that affects water pressure. So there's real water pressure issues then, and the hoses were not working. So it just became this really, really bad situation. I have a former student who's a wildfire fighter, and I was talking to him quite a bit over the past couple of days, and he was talking about how, funding has continuously been cut. He talked about how salaries are not increasing, and these are people with families that they have to live in very tough situations. A lot of them live in their cars during these firefighting endeavors. He talks about how their equipment is extremely outdated. They're still using equipment from the 1960s because it's just like what they have. So I don't know exactly how it started. No one knows yet. Well, maybe we'll figure it out. But that is the situation, and it just ripped through neighborhoods. It ripped through wealthy neighborhoods. It ripped through poor neighborhoods. But I think it's important to take a critical thinking approach to all of this. So the first thing is the political blame game started right away. Right away. This is Karen Bass, who's the mayor of LA, and it's Gavin Newsom. It's their fault. That's all there is to it. Or on the other side is that it's climate change. So I'll start with the kind of Republican side. But I heard someone say one time that government is a lot more like Veep than it is House of Cards. It's not these super geniuses twisting their mustache trying to manipulate the whole situation, and they're really smart and they're just hurting people, on purpose. It's a lot of incompetence. I think that there has been an affirmative action of incompetence at the highest levels, and you saw this during COVID. You see this over and over and over again, where the people who are in charge are not the best and brightest. And I think that's what you're getting with the city of Los Angeles is the people in charge are not the best and brightest. They're not the best at running things, and yet they are in charge. So when a massive event happens, they just are ill-equipped to handle it. Okay. And all the stuff leading up to it. They're just not good at management. And yet they're in charge because they're from these wealthy, connected families. They went to the best schools and all of those sorts of things. So now we have this situation where leadership is not good. And leadership obviously matters. So on the political right, a lot of people are pointing to this idea of the smelt. Smelt are like these little fish that are important to an ecosystem because the little fish get eaten by the big fish. Big fish, they have it's a whole ecosystem of keeping California wildlife, like sustainable. So what they did was they rerouted fresh water coming down from Canada in the mountains into the ocean because the smelt like this like briny, more like fresh water mixed with ocean water environment. So a lot of farmers for years have been very upset with Gavin Newsom and this decision to focus on the ecological and the environmental issue and less on their farms to water their crops and less on the reservist water for all kinds of things, including for firefighting. Environmentalism is important. Taking care of ecosystems is important, but it's also like higher up on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When it comes to a society, if you're focused on climate change and what could happen down the road, then you have food on your plate. You are okay today, so you're going to think about the future. It's like you're not thinking about your existential crisis of like, who am I? What is my place in this world until you have food on the table, until you have water, until you have shelter. Okay, once you have those things covered, then you can move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think that's kind of what's going on is California, because so many people in power in California, the people who are in the strongest, like politically active parts of California, they're focused on that kind of stuff because they are comfortable. California is unbelievably segregated by class. Not so much by race. By race a little bit, but that gets muddled. Okay, it's really by class. I taught in East LA. I had 17-year-old students who had never been to the beach. They were 20 minutes away from the beach, never been to the beach. Then I taught in a wealthy area of West LA. They have never been to the barrio. They've never been to the hood. So we're very, very like segregated. We don't talk to each other much in LA. And I think that the people that are in power in LA are focused on things like environmentalism, but there's a lot of poor people in LA who are just trying to get food on the table. They're in a very desperate situation. And those groups don't interact nearly as much as they should. The DEI issue has come up quite a bit too. Adam Carolla years ago testified in Congress, or I'm not sure exactly where, but I saw it on YouTube. It's really interesting to watch. He talked about how he wanted to be a fireman because he had like a 1.3 GPA and didn't know what he was going to do with his life. And so he went to the fire department. They said, no, you have to wait. Like we can't hire you unless you are a minority or a woman. So he's a white man. He had to wait, and he waited 7 years to get a call to go take the test to go become a fireman. And when he was in line, he turned to a woman of color and he said, I've been waiting 7 years. How long have you been waiting? She said, 4 days or something like that. She's like, I signed up on Wednesday. So if you look at the fire chief of Los Angeles, it's a woman. Okay. Can women be great firefighters? Of course. Okay. But who do we really want to be firefighters? Do we want more people of color? Do we want more women? No, we want the best. We want the best because the job actually matters. And the thing about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is it might have good intentions of like representation, but it's actually bad on so many different levels. It hurts on so many different levels because what you do is you take people who are underqualified for positions and you put them in those positions. So for example, if you take lifeguards and you say, I want to hire more Asian lifeguards. Okay. So you have people do the lifeguard test and you have 50 people do the test and the top scoring Asian person is the 15th person, just happens to be. Okay. Now you give them the job, but there are 14 people that are better than them for that job. Now you put them in that position as a lifeguard and then someone's drowning, you send them in there and they can't save that person and maybe they drown themselves. You're getting people into positions that they're in over their head. And this happened with affirmative action. What happened was you get people into universities who aren't quite capable of hanging at that like top university. So they fail out. Then they go home. So there's, yay, you got into Yale, great job. But then they come home like, I couldn't handle it. That's worse. It's like now you're a failure. And you're walking around the campus. People go, oh, you're only here because of affirmative action. Jobs actually matter. Meritocracy, and there's issues around the idea of meritocracy. How much do we really have a meritocracy? Because as I said, a lot of times it's about who you know, not what you know. Some people get great tutors. Some people don't. Some people have all the best, computer equipment and things at their home. Some people don't have the lights on. Okay. So the idea of a meritocracy is deeply flawed. but we want to get as close to giving people opportunities to have, an equal playing field. But then after that, like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because I don't want a surgeon to operate on my mom's brain tumor who just didn't have food in their cupboard, so they should be their surgeon. Like, I don't care. Pick the rich kid who had the best computer equipment and was dissecting animals when they were 4 years old with a PhD person. Like, that's who I want operating my mom. Like, we've disconnected the idea that jobs and positions actually matter because school is set up with this thing. It's just like grades and grades and grades, not connecting those grades to a level of competency. And I think there's elements of that are absolutely going on. We don't want to punish the most qualified. We don't want to punish the most qualified. The best people for the job is who we should get for those jobs, especially jobs that are really important. And a lot of jobs are really, really important. So I think from the political right, they're pointing to that kind of stuff. They're pointing to the DEI stuff. They're pointing to the environmentalism stuff. And they're saying this is what's causing it. It's the mismanagement. It's the focus on this stuff and not the stuff that really matters. Now the political left is talking about climate change. Is any of this true? Yeah, I think some of this is true because temperatures are increasing. To what degree is that human caused? We don't really know, but temperatures are rising, even if it's just naturally occurring because, they say the climates are always changing and stuff. Okay, cool. But the temperatures are rising. That's leading to longer, more severe droughts. Longer, more severe droughts lead to drier land. Drier land is more flammable. That could lead to, worse, more devastating fires. Okay. Like it doesn't really matter why there's a climate change for all intents and purposes. Like there is this like increase in temperature and that's going to cause increase in droughts, Also within just like, not just climate change, but within environmentalism, the focus on environmentalism is we are overdeveloping areas like Los Angeles. So what happens is they're building communities in wildlife areas. So it's like the concept of like encroaching on wildlife land. So now you have mountain lions roaming through neighborhoods, picking up, pets and maybe even children. Like that's a problem, when we get too close to nature because nature's so tricky. So it's so harsh, I should say. Well, the same thing's happening in Los Angeles is now, as we grow into this wildlife area. And then as that catches fire, it's not the concrete jungle that are burning down. It's the places that are among a lot of, forest and a lot of trees and a lot of, land that has a lot of grasslands and things of that nature. Forest management, cleaning deadwood, proper preparation for things. If insurance companies knew that these areas were of extreme risk, like thousands of policies were pulled from Pacific Palisades just recently. Okay, so they knew that this was at risk. If they knew, then a lot of people knew, then we could have prepared for this. These insurance companies are going to do what insurance companies are going to do. They're corporations. The job of a corporation is to raise shareholder value. That's their job. Okay? Make money. So if they can't make money, they're not going to. And California, one of the policies that they have done is they limit the premiums that insurance companies can charge. You can only charge people so much. It's a very California thing is like, don't overcharge people. Okay. So, rent control is a big thing in California. Don't take advantage of the poor. Like that sounds good. The problem is, it's the same thing with rent control. Well, then people don't update their buildings. Then people don't, then places get more dilapidated because like, why would I upgrade my building that costs me money if I can't charge more rent? Well, the same thing happens with these insurance companies is if you can't charge more premiums, the insurance companies just go, fine, we just won't insure them then. And they're out and they leave and then people are uninsured. So this whole concept of insurance companies, leaving, I mean, people lost millions of dollars and they might not get repaid. Besides, even if they did have insurance, I don't know if these insurance companies can cover it. The scale of this is so big, these insurance companies are going to go insolvent. They just can't pay out what they're contractually obligated to pay out. And that's a problem. I'm talking about potentially like hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's a real sticky situation for all these people because of how they're going to be reimbursed. And they might have been paying a lot in insurance and not getting anything back. It's like, sorry, lost it. Sorry. It's like a bank run. It's like, well, we gave you your money, but we squandered it. We didn't do anything with it. We can't pay it. Sorry, can't get blood from a stone. And takes me to like the last part of this, which is about the humanity. We're seeing like the best and worst of humanity. But one of the things that I've seen is people saying, well, they're rich. They're rich, so they're fine. The Pacific Palisades had a trailer park, a mobile home park. Also, I know people personally whose families had bought land in Malibu in like the 1960s or 50s because it was cheap. It was really cheap. It was out there. It was really far away. Okay. So because of that, they bought a place in Malibu, and then it's just kind of exchanged hands down generation to generation. And they have this house now. It's like $15 million house, but they don't want to sell it because it's been in their family for so long. And even if they're just work normal jobs, normal 9 to 5s, they make $80,000 a year, but they have this family Malibu house that's $15-20 million, but they don't want to sell it because they're like, this is important to us. But that's like a nest egg for the future if they ever need to. Well, now it's gone. They could have sold it. They could have, been living a very different lifestyle, but now it's gone. There's stories like that. There's a lot of people that don't. Plus, in Pacific Palisades, a lot of people are house rich and asset poor. That they move to a nice neighborhood so their kids can go to the best schools and things, but then they don't have a lot of resources other than their house. So all they have is their house, and now they lost their house. So this idea of, well, you live in a rich neighborhood, so you're fine. Like, just that. First of all, that's gross. Like, rich people are people too. There's this weird thing about vilifying wealth. There's like a thing in our culture right now where it used to be you see someone in a Rolls Royce, you go, that's old man Jenkins, and he worked really hard, and he drives a Rolls Royce now, and if you work hard, you can drive a Rolls Royce too. And now it's like, F Mr. Jenkins, like that fascist or whatever, like that there's like a thing about like hating wealthy people. But we're in America, and we should aspire to gather resources, hopefully, and with those resources, you can do good in the world. Remember, every charity needs money. So if you're like, well, I don't care about money, do you care about helping people? Because you can help a lot of people with a lot of money. So maybe it's not just about you. But there is this way to virtue signal of like, I just don't care about money. I don't make money a priority. Well, if you think money's the root of all evil, you haven't given enough away. Give it away. Help people with that money. Help people with those resources. There's this very, very weird element of that, of the humanity element of this, which is looting has been going on a lot. I talked to one of the sheriffs when I went down to Malibu just to show my kids some of the area, and the sheriff's like, yeah, looters are everywhere. It's really bad. I would never excuse looters who are looting a house that was abandoned during a horrible crisis, but we have to understand it. We can explain it. There are people who are in desperate situations. If they can go in there and get some things, they can get some electronics or get some jewelry or get something of value that they can sell and then make some money to help provide for their families, they're going to do it. And maybe it's not just to provide for their families. Maybe they're just doing it because there is also this culture of like, F the rich, but also with women increasingly dominating university populations. So women are more represented in universities now than men. Women tend to settle down and marry with men that are across or up the socioeconomic hierarchy. Rarely does a woman marry a man who makes less money than she does. So what does that mean for the men? Because college degrees are directly linked to how much money you make. It causes the men of a society to get more and more risky. So you see that with gambling increases in men. You see that with crypto in men. It's like, let's gamble big because they have to compete for these women who are getting college degrees. And I think that there's an element of that at play here where these guys are like, if I can loot, I can get a whole bunch of things and I can make some money off of that stuff and I can sell these TVs and I can sell these things, then I'm going to do it because I got to compete for these women. It goes back to like a very kind of evolutionary, primitive element of us. So we have to understand why people are looting. Prices are unbelievably high in California. There was an avian flu. So my mother-in-law just paid $13 for a dozen eggs, over $1 an egg. Okay. Like Things are expensive. You go to a Walgreens, you look, everything's $15, $12, $18 for just like little things. So people get desperate. Desperate people turn to desperate things. I don't like this like boo-hoo, they're rich thing. Like, oh, you poor thing. Like what, like that, like sarcastic stuff. But there's a lot of that. There's a lot of vilifying the wealth. There's also a lot of vilifying the looters. And I get that one more clearly. Like, it's wrong to loot. What makes them think that it's okay? Look, this is the school teacher in me. This is a softie in me. Is like, what leads you to think that it's okay to break into a house where people are, just trying to save their families? Like, there's something off. Culturally, there's something off. Where are their role models that say like, no, you don't do that? It's just not a thing. 2024 is very different. I don't think it would have been like this 2 generations ago. So there's something lacking here. People are really missing a moral guidebook on how they're supposed to behave. So there's a lot of ugliness, but there's also a lot of beautiful stuff. People are stepping up. The firefighters and first responders working like just 24 hours around the clock. We have firefighters from all around California, all around LA, all around various states that are close, also from Canada and Mexico, coming down to help, risking their lives. And we have people going to food banks and volunteering and collecting bags and donations and sharing stuff on social media about where you can donate and giving their money and giving their resources. It's beautiful. There's a book that I give that's required reading for my civics class by Sebastian Junger called Tribe. It's about the importance of having a tribe. And one of the lines from that book that just like hit me really hard is, things were better when they were bad. And what that means is when your family or your community or your tribe goes through something really difficult, that it brings you closer together. And I do think that there's an element of that in this city right now where people are getting closer together because we have a common enemy in this fire. We have something that we need to overcome together. And I think that's really a beautiful thing. Even like prison inmates are now fighting and saving homes, and they're getting their records expunged. They have a chance of redemption. So with all these different areas, I just wanted to point out that there's like sides to this. And I hope that this podcast is able to help you to kind of work through all these things. So you're not just getting one narrative. You're not just getting one Fox News narrative or one MSNBC narrative. And you're kind of seeing how this is complicated. And it's an opportunity for all of us to step up and bring out the best in us. So thank you so much for listening and for watching. And I'll see you in the next episode.